And welcome back to the SPO podcast. I'm Nelson Hubble. I'm joined by Jackson Hyden, SPO Sports Plus Opinion. We're here with all of our rambling and ranting, and today it's going to be a couple different things. We're going to spread across three different sports, Jackson.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a weird thing. We're changing away from the radio show to the podcast, and I can definitely see that you were tripping up there. But yeah, no, we're talking about a multitude of different things today. Not a whole lot of, not a big lineup of stuff, but definitely we got some Sweet 16 preview. We could finish up talking about some of the stuff that was going on the other day, at least when we were recording on Sunday, and then some new NFL rule changes, whether we agree or disagree with them, and then MLB. Opening day is tomorrow, so we can talk about some of that, look at some of the depth chart stuff, maybe some predictions from ourselves, and see how everything goes. But I think we could start off with some March Madness, shall we?
Yeah, I'm absolutely ready to do that because obviously the Sweet 16 is going to start tomorrow, Thursday, and some of those games I think they're all pretty good. So we talked a little bit about how the tournament maybe didn't have as much chaos, especially after round like one. And so you get into the second round of the weekend, round of 32, and a lot of the teams that we thought were probably going to win, a lot of the higher seeds won. The only double digit seed is NC State, and the lowest seed past that is Clemson, I think, and then there's a couple fives, and everyone else is like a 1, 2, or 3. So and Duke's the 4. So obviously some really interesting stuff to cover there. Do you want to start with the East region and just get that out of the way? UConn, San Diego State, I think, is the first one.
Yeah, one graphic that I saw, I think while watching the Houston game was this is only like the fifth time in the history of March Madness that all 1 and 2 seeds have ever made it to the Sweet 16 and the same thing, which is kind of like shocking a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. But yeah, we didn't really touch on San Diego State Yale very much the other day. San Diego State just taking a walk in the park against Yale, not Whale. And so it's going to be UConn San Diego State, which is the national championship rematch from last year, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yep.
And UConn obviously winning that one. So San Diego State's going to be out for some blood, but the way UConn's been playing right now, I don't think San Diego State's going to stand a chance.
I do think UConn is going to win this game. That being said, when you look at the numbers statistically, UConn slightly better. Maybe you'd lean towards them in a couple different categories. But man, they're pretty damn close in stats. I mean, you look across the board, 3-point shooting, kind of right there. Now UConn makes about 2 more a game. They take 2 more a game. The big number that's interesting for me is the assist number, and what it tells me is that San Diego State runs a little bit more ISO, or they work with one-on-ones a little bit more, and they're more comfortable doing that, which can be good against good teams. But also you're gonna have to pass the ball quite a bit to make an impact against a really good defense. And so 5 more assists per game is what UConn's running with. They're running with about 18 and a half assists per game. San Diego State's at 13. So it's just a different style of offense too, which is, I mean, interesting alone because that offers a very unique matchup. But I think this is going to probably be a little bit lower scoring of a game because both teams are going to lock down on defense. Could be wrong.
Yeah, and last year, looking at that national championship, UConn taking care of San Diego State 76-59. I mean, it was UConn got out early and they had about a 12-point lead going into half, and then UConn just kind of floored it in the second half and never looked back. I mean, you talk about the assist numbers, UConn having 7 more in that game. It just overall looked way more dominant from the UConn side of things. Shooting 35% from 3, 43% from the field compared to 32 and 26 for San Diego State. And yeah, I mean, it's just a way more physical style of ball from UConn. So for me, I'm definitely going to be taking UConn, and I think a lot of people will too. But who knows? Maybe they'll change some things. San Diego State, had a easy game against Yale.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still a very dominant team, very much so like last year. So it'll be a fun one, but I think it'll probably be one of the least like anticipated matchups of the weekend. But moving on to the bottom side of the East bracket, we got Illinois, Iowa State. Illinois, super hot right now. obviously coming off the Big Ten championship game, taking care of taking care of Duquesne and Morehead State pretty easily. I think this is gonna be their first really big competition since that Wisconsin game.
Yeah, and Iowa State also one of those teams that won their conference tournament on a roll, playing very good basketball right now, and maybe not as good in the tournament. Part of that's matchups. I feel like even though Illinois was a 3 seed, Morehead and Duquesne were easier matchups than Washington State was for Iowa State. South Dakota State's no competition, but Illinois' offense is really good. Iowa State is a well-rounded team. So I'm really curious to see who, if Illinois gets stuck in a situation where Terrence Shannon Jr., who no means no, but Terrence Shannon Jr., that honestly, he's going to hear a lot of those chants. I guarantee it. He has all weekend. But I don't. If he gets into a spot where he isn't on the court, and they can't rely on him to get a bucket, and Iowa State's rolling on offense, because he's gonna need a breather, and maybe he won't. Maybe he'll play all 40. But they've been working him like a horse, like a racehorse, and they've just been riding him all tournament, and he's been great, and he was great in the Big Ten tournament. Can't lie about that. Now, off the court stuff aside, so you come with Iowa State, and obviously they're a well-rounded team, but who's their guy, right? So then you compare them, and you're like, okay, because to me, in March, when you have someone that you can rely on, I don't like Terrence Shannon Jr. Don't get me wrong, but when you have a guy that you can rely on, and the reality is he's a great basketball player. That's huge. And in games that are going to be really close and really competitive, you need those dudes who can just go get a bucket. The amount of fouls he draws because he's so good at getting to the rack and also finishing through contact or finding ways to get the ball up through contact. He's a great slasher, and a good shooter from the outside. So to me, who's that for Iowa State? And I look at that game and I lean Illinois, even though they're the 3 seed in the bracket.
Yeah, and looking at statistical breakdown, it's a pretty even matchup across the board. I guess the only like sizable advantage, and it's not even that much, is Illinois with free throws, and they're at 73% compared to 69% with Iowa State.
Yeah.
But even rebounds. I mean, this is your typical Midwest Big Ten, or not Big Ten, but like Midwest basketball showdown. So I think it'll be a close one. I think it's going to be one of the more fun ones of the weekend. And I think, it's just going to be a dogfight, and Illinois obviously being in the first Sweet 16 in quite some time. I don't remember the last time they were in it, but it's been a minute. So
it might be that run they made back in the 2000s.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And so I think for them, they're going to definitely want to try to capitalize on this opportunity. Iowa State has been pretty consistent over the last few years. So I don't know. For me, I don't remember who I had in my bracket, but I think Big Ten. I'm going to go Big Ten here. So Illinois. I mean, who do you got?
Yeah, I lean Illinois. I also don't know who I had in my bracket. It might have been Iowa State because I didn't trust Illinois in a big game, but I'm not sure because it'll be their first real test of the tournament. That said, I don't like, after seeing what they've done, because that was pre-tournament, obviously, right? So after seeing how each team has played against their own respective competition, I lean Illinois. And when you look at the rundown of what Iowa State does best, it's guard play. They have some really good guard play. They're not a great shooting team, albeit like at least at the top end of their scoring. And so that lends itself to maybe a closer matchup. But Iowa State does play really well on defense. They average 10 assists a game, which is really good. And each of their top 3 guards averages 1.5 or more. And so you look at what they're able to do on defense, maybe that can slow Illinois down. But really, man, with having a guy, a dude that you can just go to, it's just gotta be Illinois for me. And they're a pretty balanced team. I don't trust their post play that much, so that should be interesting. But man, they have a pretty balanced team, and they can go a little bit, into their bench and trust those guys. So I do lean Illinois. If you're ready, we can move on to the next game in the West region.
Yeah, and like one last thing, Illinois seeking their first Elite Eight and potentially first Final Four since that 2005 season where they were runner-ups in the NCAA or tournament. So
yeah,
But yeah, moving on down to the West, or over to the West, you got North
Mhm.
Carolina, Alabama to kick things off. And, looking at Bama's path to this point, Bama pretty much taking care of Charleston. So that Grand Canyon game was close until the end. North Carolina is on fire right now. They're rolling. But I think this one is going to be the first like actual tough matchup for both of them. I don't see how Alabama is going to come through on this one, to be honest. I I don't know. Like, what are
Mhm.
your thoughts on it? I mean, again, statistically, this is a pretty even matchup. But obviously on paper, I mean, we all like North Carolina's got the experience.
Yeah, they're the better team. To me, when I look at what Alabama has done all year, they're not going to play much defense. So like, let's not kid ourselves about that. They're gonna and they do turn it over a bit. They average 12 turnovers a game, which isn't the worst, but it's not great. So what you have to look at with what Bama's doing is they're gonna want, and I think this is their best chance. It could be wrong to get into basically just a race to 100, pretty much. First team to get like to score 90 or 100 wins this game, I think, and it's gonna be a track meet. I don't think that, or at least I think that's what Alabama's gonna want. I don't think they're gonna want to slow down their tempo. I think they're gonna want to play really, really fast. I think they're gonna want to run up and down the court and score. And they have some guys. I mean, they have four guys averaging double digits in scoring, and Mark Sears, who's averaging over 20 a game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. And they're getting it's again one of those games where they have some really good guard play. I don't totally trust their post play against Baycott, and that's going to be the big thing I think in this game. That could be a difference maker is if Baycott gets going and they just can't defend him, then they're going to have some problems. And especially if you have to come down and double and do all of that, which again takes away from your defense, a defense that's already struggling. So I lean UNC in that game, but I can see a world where Alabama gets out into a track meet and scores 90, 100 points. What did they put up? I think they put up almost 100 in one of their games.
They put up 109 against
109
Charleston
against
in round
right.
one.
That's right. So they put up 109 against Charleston, which not the same, but they're capable. 72 against Grand Canyon. I don't think 72 is enough to beat UNC. And so that's what I look for. That's what I'm going to keep an eye on. And the color matchup, let's not forget it. I mean, we're rooting sort of in a way we talked about in the last episode for Clemson, North Carolina to meet just because that would be such a visually appealing matchup. This one too. I mean, Alabama, North Carolina, if we can get them in the powder blues and Alabama and like the all crimson red, that would be a fun one to watch just visually.
Yeah, I don't know. In terms of uniforms, I'm not a big fan of their color red, especially on their uniforms. But
Well,
eh,
you're a Wisconsin guy, but I agree. It's not as good as like some of the maybe a little bit brighter of a red.
but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, definitely going to take UNC probably in this game. Just because of how hot they've been playing. But moving down to Clemson, Arizona, I think this is going to be a tight one. Arizona won by 10 against Dayton. Dayton was hot though. Clemson
Yep.
has also been playing really good basketball as of late. So I think this is going to be close all the way through the end. Arizona's been stumbling over the last month or so of that play. I like Clemson. I want Clemson. So I think I'll probably end up taking Clemson here. Looking like statistically speaking, though, Arizona does have quite the advantage, unless you're talking free throws, and that comes Clemson. Um, but Arizona's been top in the country all season long, so it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. I feel like this one's either going to be a blowout or it's going to be down to the last second. So
I don't think it'll be a blowout. I do think it'll be a really close game late. And Clemson just keeps making the plays that they need to make. And all of these games that they've played so far late, in their own tournament in the ACC here and as well in the NCAA tournament, they made enough plays against Baylor. They really sustained leads in most of their games. Like they kind of got out to a lead and didn't really ever give it up. And Arizona, kind of the same deal, more or less, And I know Arizona's the higher seed, and I know that they have Caleb Love and a couple guys in the post who I think can probably contribute big time. I mean, obviously, Ballo's going to average. I mean, he's averaging double double, so he's probably going to get that. Um, That's the thing. I think PJ Hall for Clemson is going to have to step up. I mean, he averages 18 and a half and 6 boards. So they're not like a team that gets on the glass a ton, comparatively speaking. I mean, Arizona's out rebounding. I mean, the rebound difference at least is 6 rebounds a game. So you look at that and you think, okay, well, maybe in a close game that stuff matters. You know, who's getting the boards? If, you know, late Ballo gets a board, Love gets out and runs. I don't know. But I do think it's going to be really close. And this is one of the ones that I think is the biggest toss up for me. It makes me want to lean Arizona based on the body of work that they've had this year and veteran experience in the tournament with a guy like Caleb Love, who's been there, done that, won a national championship. So I think that's where I'm going to lean. I think Love has a really big game, but a guy like Joe Girard at Clemson, I mean, who comes over from Syracuse, who is a killer. He is a killer when it matters. He's got that it factor, so to speak, I guess. I don't know what else to call it. You know, that where you could turn it on in the clutch moments. And so Gerard could try to maybe keep them in the game, shooting from 3. His average is 41%. And if he has some crazy big game, kind of like Jack Golke or something like that, maybe not quite to that degree, but where he's getting maybe 5, 6, 7 or 3-pointers, and maybe Clemson can pull it out in the end. But really, man, I just don't think they have enough offense. I think Arizona rebounding offense, they're just gonna take it late. Probably they're just gonna pull away a little bit late, or maybe it'll come down to the final, 2 minutes or so.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be a good one. I think ultimately, I think North Carolina is going to be the one that comes out of this region.
Yes.
I think I think that's how it is. And unfortunately, I feel like we're going to see a 1-1 matchup in the Final Four. But I mean, that's of course what everybody. I mean, that's what all the big markets want, I guess. But
And that's what you expect, right? I mean, there's a
right.
reason these teams are ranked here. There's
Yeah.
a reason they're 1 seed. So even if it's not what we necessarily want, we like the chaos. Yeah,
I
what are you
it
gonna do?
just makes good basketball, and
Yeah.
honestly, like, I think a lot of us, as much as we love the Cinderella story, I think a lot of us would prefer maybe a matchup like that rather than your FAU, San Diego State, when it's like a 20-point blowout in the national
Or
championship.
yeah,
But
you want a close championship game. You can't have, especially, I mean, the college football playoff, it was an issue for at times where you get a teams that are matching up in like that 4-1 where it's just like a blowout. And even in the NCAAs, I mean, last year you mentioned it, San Diego State, they lost by like what, 16? Is that what so obviously you want competitive games in the championships. That's what makes it the most fun. And some people talk, I think you might have mentioned something about it with Duke, North Carolina. Oh, I don't know if I want that. Like, I don't know if like that's what people want. For me, I think that's like, I don't need it every year, but that is an incredible, I mean, that rivalry is one of the best rivalries in sports. So to have that in a national championship game is unreal. That is awesome.
yeah,
And so that would be actually really cool, even though I hate Duke and North Carolina, don't really like them that much either. But that would be super sick. I mean, that would be like Michigan, Ohio State in the national championship in football. Like, that's just unbelievable. So, yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But speaking of Duke, do we want to move to Houston Duke now? And
yeah. I was gonna say let's go down south and talk about that region. Like you said, Houston Duke. That Houston game. I know we were recording in the middle of that game. That game going into overtime, Texas A&M was down. They went on a 13-3 run to end the game. Tied it with a 3-point buzzer beater, which was just unreal. It was one of those games like, dude, I got to go to bed, but it just keeps going. It keeps going. And I told you to turn it on. That's how good it was. But no, I mean, Texas A&M, I think I think it was Texas A&M's game to lose, and that's exactly what happened. I felt like they were just making a lot of shots, but they were in overtime, they were taking a lot of stupid shots. And Houston, over half of their starters were fouled out too. So, Texas A&M had it on a golden platter. We were super close to seeing our first like really, really big upset of last weekend. Houston prevailed. Houston came through. They moved on to the Sweet 16 for like the 5th year in a row, I believe. They'll take on Duke, who, like I said, dog walked James Madison. I think this is going to be another good matchup here with Houston Duke. Looking at it from a statistical standpoint, it's pretty even across the board. Duke is a better shooting team. They shoot just under 50%. Um, but everything else, looking up and down this, is pretty close. So I think if I have to take a pick here, I think I'm going to go with Duke, just with how I know is you kind of get a false sample with like against James Madison, but they looked like Duke during that JMU game, and they just couldn't miss. So I'm going to take Duke heading to the Elite Eight. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
I think this is a more of a toss-up than I was expecting coming into the tournament. I would have leaned Houston coming in because of how dominant they've been. And you're like you're saying, I'm starting to lean towards Duke the more I watch. Now, the one thing that makes a big impact in these tournament games is turnover and assist numbers, but turnovers and like how much you're turning it over and how much you're forcing turnovers, right? And Houston's averaging like 4 more steals. They're averaging about 10 steals per game, which is really good. We talked about that earlier as well, but Duke's only averaging 6.6. Houston's averaging more blocks, more steals, and less turnovers. The turnover difference it's like 1 turnover per game. But if that's how the game goes, if Houston forces more turnovers, they protect the ball. If they get their average 9 turnovers, if that's what they're at, and they force like 10, 15, 15 for sure feels like a win for Houston. And they just shoot it just well enough. There's a way that they're able to win this game without playing great on offense. And so I don't foresee it happening, which is where I'm going with this, especially how they played against A&M. You mentioned that A&M game as being one of that chance at a big upset and A&M blowing it. I totally agree. I mean, it's a 9 seed upsetting a 1. I know that Oakland upset Kentucky, but that still would have felt like a bigger upset to me. And A&M almost didn't make the tournament, by the way. They had to win a couple of games in the SEC tournament to make it to the NCAA, I think. They were on the bubble to solidify themselves. So Houston's vulnerable right now, and Duke looks good. And you're right, maybe it was a false sample with that JMU game, but I don't know, man. And it feels like we're picking a lot of the same teams right now, but I'm feeling Duke. I'm feeling Duke, and I don't like that I am, but that's the reality. And to be honest, I think they're in the Final Four if they win that game because I don't trust Marquette at all. And NC State, it feels fluky right now. And I don't think, and which we can get to if you want right now.
Right. Well, look, going back to that Duke, I mean, we all hate Duke for our own reasons, right? Duke kept me from seeing my first ever national championship, right? But
I just don't like Kyle Filipowski and Grayson Allen.
But I don't know. There was something that like sparked in me that when I'm watching like the highlights of that game, just seeing how many I don't know, just how pure they were from shooting. I don't know. It's just for me. I hate Duke, and if they get to the Elite Eight, I'm going to be cheering for whoever's playing them in that Elite Eight. But yeah, Houston looking for their first Final Four appearance since 2021. They're looking for their first Elite Eight appearance since 2022. Houston also seeking their first national championship since 1984. So it'll be,
even though they've been consistently good, right? They haven't made it.
Right. But yeah, you're right. So it's it's going to be good, and I want to see Houston do it. Houston's like that team that's consistently been good over the years, but they just haven't been able to get over that hump. So it'll be good. But moving on down, this is more kind of your Cinderella story, I guess. And I know it's ACC team, so you can't really call it a Cinderella story, but it's an 11 seed versus 2 seed Marquette. I really like NC State in this matchup. NC State has been hot. They won 5 games in 5 days. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was something like they played like 7 games in like
7 days, I think, wasn't it? Something like that.
Well, I'm including the NCAA tournament.
Oh, okay.
So it was something like 7 games in like 2 weeks, which is a lot of basketball. And so they finally get some rest. They got a few days. I don't know when this game is, what day it is, but
let me check here. But I do think that hurts them. That brings up a question for me because they've been on such a roll. Do you think having a week off, they just fall flat?
I don't think so, because if you're feeling, because everybody's going to be doing it, because in that sense, like everybody's got to be hot to get to this point. Marquette won their tournament, Marquette made it to this point, right? So they're playing NC State. Looking up and down, it the statistically, it gives like NC State a slight edge, but Marquette's the better team, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, NC State, looking for their first. This is their first Sweet 16 since 2015. So this is a big for that program, and a team that wasn't going to make the tournament had they not won their conference championship.
Yeah.
So not only are they in their first Sweet 16 since 2015, but they're also looking for their first Elite Eight since 1986, first Final Four since 1983, and that's when the same year they won the national championship. So I like NC State. I'm going to take NC State to end up facing Duke. So you're going to get an ACC Elite Eight. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that part of the bracket, this side of the bracket, the right side, is all Friday games.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the first game on Friday at 7:09, whatever. And so that'll be a great way to kick it off. And then right after that is going to be the Duke game. So I look at what NC State has done, and they have the momentum. I already said my concern. I feel like Marquette has just kind of been a fraud all year. I just like, it just feels like that. They squeaked out over Colorado. Western Kentucky was closer than it should have been for a good amount of that game. They did have a really big second half, and end of the first half that pulled them away to a double-digit win. But I don't like Marquette that much. Now NC State I don't love either, but the fact that and that game against Oakland, right? I really think Oakland blew that in regulation. I really
Mhm.
do. But NC State, they beat Texas Tech. They did beat Oakland, who played very, very well. I think Oakland would probably be in the Elite Eight. They'd probably beat Marquette had they won that game. I really do. They have the pieces. They have a shooter. They have a guy in the post that they can rely on. They have good point guard play. I think that Oakland probably should have won that game. Nonetheless, NC State did win, and they found a way, which is what good teams do. And they got a matchup against another really good team, who I just think Marquette's been a bit of a fraud, and it's a hard pick because it feels fake that NC State has gotten this far to some degree.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It doesn't feel right, especially how they played all year.
Mm-hmm.
But they're playing well right now, and that's all that matters. So I'm gonna pick NC State. I do think Marquette is probably the logical pick, to be honest. But because there's a reason they're a 2 seed, but I just don't believe in them. And Shaka Smart has not had a great postseason reputation. I mean, at Texas he didn't, at Marquette now, but so we'll see. I'm going NC State. I'm going Wolfpack. We'll find that one out because that one's going to be Friday. I'm really honestly more excited about the bottom part of this bracket, the Purdue Gonzaga game and the Tennessee Creighton. I think those might be really fun games. So if we want to get into Purdue Gonzaga,
we definitely can. I mean, Marquette hasn't really made a lot of progress in the tournament. Their last deepest run, or the last time they were in the Elite Eight was 2013, and they haven't made a Final Four since 2003. So that'll definitely be interesting. This is kind of like the same, both sides of this, the Duke, Houston, and then NC State, Marquette, same color uniforms things. I think this is, you want to talk about uniform matchups. That Duke Houston's going to look good. That NC State Marquette, I don't know, not as much, but a little bit better. But let's head out to the Midwest. Start with the first one, Purdue Gonzaga. Gonzaga, I feel like was maybe slept on coming into the tournament a little bit.
Definitely by me.
Yeah, they rolled by both of their opponents, including a Kansas. I mean, yes, Kansas was beaten up, but still, Purdue has been looking really, really good. And they're looking like a completely different team than what we saw in the Big Ten tournament. I think, I think I mentioned it that I had a perfect Midwest bracket. And I think I have Zaga Creighton. I'm still gonna say that, but I think Purdue will probably take care of Gonzaga. But yeah, I don't know. It's Gonzaga definitely shoots the ball better. Purdue's better from three, surprisingly, no matter how many times they go down to Edie, but they probably also don't shoot as many threes as that. And then
I think they do. I don't know. I look at this matchup and I do think it'll be close for a while, but
Mhm.
I struggle with not picking Purdue.
Right.
Um, and so the reason is because I just think like Purdue's, like you're saying, they've played so well. I mean, maybe they used up their. This is the one thing I really kind of believe in this, that you can sort of use up your shooting magic in one game and then come out flat shooting the next. And it's possible they did that against Utah State because their offense was rolling so much, like it's so well. I watched that game and Utah State couldn't do any. It didn't matter what they did. I mean, they put. I mean, Purdue put up 100, but it didn't matter what they did because Purdue would continuously make shots with anybody that played. I mean, it didn't matter who it was. They were going deep on the bench. They had
Mhm.
walk-ons out there, I think, and it didn't matter. And so not they had non-scholarship players. And I think I think there's a chance, but I'm gonna go Purdue because to me, they're the most well-rounded team besides maybe UConn in this tournament, and they're right there. That was a hard pick for me in the Final
Mhm.
Four. I did pick UConn, and I don't know, but Purdue is just they're well rounded. They have really good point guard play from Braden Smith. They have Zach Edey. They have guys that can help that do like the dirty work, like Mason Gillis does. And Fletcher Lawyer is a good shooter from the outside. Lance Jones is a really athletic guard who also shoots it pretty well. They're
Mhm.
just a well-rounded team, and so I lean Purdue.
Yeah, and this is kind of a big game for Matt Painter as well in his 19th season. He's only made it to the Elite Eight in 2019, and I'm pretty sure they lost that one close. And they haven't been to a Final Four since 1980, and they definitely have a team that could make it to the Final Four. Um, I don't.
That was the year, right, where Virginia beat them. They had that buzz. It was Carson Edwards for Purdue, and then Virginia had that one guy with like the blonde bleached like hair, like tips or whatever, like frosted tips, basically, or whatever.
Yeah, it was
Um,
it was overtime Virginia. That's what it was. I don't
okay.
know. I don't
Well,
remember
they
it
hit
as
this
much, but
crazy shot. Like Purdue missed it, missed like a layup or something, or for whatever reason, Virginia got a chance. They stole the ball. I don't remember what it was. And literally at the buzzer, it was like this weird like turn around and just like throw it up and hope it goes in. And they hit it, and that was like Ty Simpson and yeah, that was that whole team. So yeah, that was the. Did Virginia win it that year? Was that the year they won the Natty?
yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So, but you're right. Painter hasn't had much success. I have a buddy who's a Purdue fan, and he in the past has been so pissed off at Matt Painter, just absolutely sick of it, losing the postseason or not making a run, being a high seed and just flopping, whatever it was. Having a really good team, and because Purdue has had some really good teams in the last 10 years, and so this is the year. I mean, he told me, he said, "Man, I don't know what I'm going to do. If they don't get to the Elite Eight, I'm just gonna. I don't know what I'm going to do." Like
I mean,
that
he'll
feels
still
like
be a fan. I mean,
he
we all
will.
say that.
He's like, the way we talked about it is like an Elite Eight solidifies Matt Painter is like, okay, we can't be mad about losing in the Elite Eight. Even the Sweet 16, at least you got there, you won 2 games. But if they lost in the first weekend, it would just be. I think it would be pandemonium, especially with the
Right.
team that they've got.
Right. And if you're looking historically for Gonzaga, this is probably not the year that they go to the Elite Eight because they have made the Elite Eight every other year since 2015. So 15, 17, 19, 21, 23. Um, but who knows? For Purdue, I mean, like we just talked about, they haven't they haven't made it to the Elite Eight since 19. So I think it'll be interesting. I think Purdue has a really good chance to come out of this bracket or like this region. Um,
It might be one of the toughest regions though, because
I
of
agree.
Tennessee.
Right. And let's transition into that. Creighton, Tennessee. Creighton has been looking really good. This one is actually in Detroit.
I was tempted to go to this game. I've got a bunch of family down in Tennessee, so I've always rooted for the Vols as like my second team
That'd be
ish.
fun.
Oakland was always up there because my sister went there and stuff. But Tennessee since I was little, so I wanted to go to this game. I just can't.
Uh, so yeah, so Tennessee and Creighton. I had Tennessee winning this one, but Creighton's been looking good to start this tournament. Um, like for sure. Creighton, taking care of South Carolina, and Oregon.
Hmm.
Excuse me, Akron and then Oregon.
Hmm.
An Oregon team that was rolling after winning the Pac-12 championship. So,
And
and
then
then
obliterating South Carolina too. I
right.
mean, Oregon's played some really good ball.
I think Tennessee's case here. is they need to finish strong because they went cold in the last 5 minutes or so of that Texas game, and that's why Texas was able to come back so easily. Tennessee just needs to. They're going to come out hot. I feel like we're going to see Tennessee stay ahead for most of the game. I think if it's anything like it has been, Creighton might start to inch back, and it's going to be like, oh, here we go again. But Tennessee is going to need to figure out how to close out and take it from Creighton. But I'm probably going to take Tennessee here.
Yeah, this could be another fun color matchup, I think, with Creighton's blue and the Tennessee orange. I'm gonna take Tennessee. I have my own biases. I already just told you what they were.
Yep.
But I also think they're the better basketball team. And with some really good guard play with Zakai Ziegler, and then you have Santiago Vescovi, who has been there in the tournament, done that. A very good shooter. And then Dalton Connect. I mean, this guy hasn't had to take over a game yet. He didn't against Texas, and he didn't before that against St. Peter's. I'm waiting for it. I am waiting for it because Connect is possibly, it's him and Zach Edey for National Player of the Year, I think. And he's just so good. And I can't wait for that game where I'm thinking it's going to be this one. It might be this one. It might be the next one where he just like pops off and goes off for like 30, 35 points and has an incredible game, makes some huge shots late. I want to see it because I know he's capable of it. And this is what we talked about is what teams have that dude in the tournament. I keep saying this. Arizona, Caleb Love, North Carolina is probably RJ Davis. They're a pretty well-rounded team though. Alabama, I'm not sure as much, but we looked at this bracket and that's the way I view it. Right. And anyways, and so Connect is that guy for Tennessee. And so I picked Tennessee, even if it wasn't a team that I had any rooting interest in. I do think I'd pick them because they have a veteran lineup as well, good guard play, and a guy like Connect who can go out and get a bucket.
Yeah, and Tennessee's always just like, I understand they're SEC and they're one of the bigger schools, but they're that team that I feel like I always want them to win. Rick Barnes in his 8th season kind of needs something to happen here. Tennessee has never been to a Final Four, and I never knew that until just now. They're seeking their first Elite Eight since 2010, and back-to-back Sweet 16. So they're getting closer to that step. I think this is a really good chance for them to finally get to the Elite Eight in over 14 years. And I think it's going to be whatever that matchup in that Elite Eight is. I think it's going to be really good. And I think we're going to see, hopefully, I think we're going to see a lot of teams that we aren't used to seeing finally get over that hump, maybe get over that hump this year.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is so if Purdue and Tennessee win like we're thinking, those are two teams who just haven't gotten over the hump, right? Those are two teams that we just haven't seen do it. And Illinois, one of those, right? They play Iowa State. If they can beat Iowa State, that might be considered getting over the hump. You win a Sweet 16 game. I don't know. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a really exciting matchup to think about. Tennessee Purdue played in the tournament. I don't remember when it was now that I think about it. It might have been that same year that Virginia beat them. I don't know when they played in maybe a Sweet 16 or something like that. I think maybe it must have been the last couple years then. Nonetheless, do you have it pulled up?
Sweet 16, 2019? Yeah, 2019, I think.
So okay. So they played in the tournament, and that was a completely different team. That was back when like Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield were on Tennessee, and I think Carson Edwards was still with Purdue, maybe Matt Harms, some of those guys. So interesting matchup, possible. They've met before. Rick Barnes, Matt Painter probably have a lot of respect for each other. Both been doing it. Both highly respected coaches in the industry, I think.
But also both two coaches that are trying to finally break this hump.
Exactly. They're trying to break through, and which makes it that much more exciting, especially for a matchup that's a 1 and a 2 without like any real upset like that you can sort of expect. So I'm excited for that. I think that does that just about wrap up the tournament talk?
Yeah.
We have a little bit to add.
Yeah, a little bit more. A couple things to look at here too is we have some chances to see multiple teams from the same conference get in this, whether that's the Big East with UConn and Marquette. We could potentially see 3 ACCs, no, 2 ACC schools get in. We could see 2 Big Ten teams get in.
3 ACC, yeah, because NC State, Clemson, and North Carolina could all make the Elite Eight.
Oh, I'm talking Final Four.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Yep.
But yeah, two of those. We could potentially see an all ACC national championship. We could see an all Big Ten championship. We could see an all Big East championship, which I think would be kind of cool, honestly, to see any of one of those. But obviously,
Hmm.
we'll talk more about that Sunday night. But yeah, but I think that kind of wraps up what we've got for March Madness. And other sorts of madness going on. We've got Shohei Ohtani, kind of been on the hot seat as of late. A lot of crazy things going on, especially with his translator Ippei Muzahara. They were together when they were in Seoul, South Korea, where the like unofficial opening day was between the Padres and the Dodgers. To catch you up if you don't know, Shohei Ohtani, obviously, if you don't know who that is, you've probably been living under a rock, but basically modern day Babe Ruth, just one of the best player in baseball right now. It came out that his translator has a gambling addiction. Obviously, Dodgers in LA, California, no sports betting or sports gambling is not legal in that country. So it was not a good look for Ohtani, especially after as much money as the Dodgers has spent on him and Yamamoto this season. Ohtani had a press conference. It was pretty much just him reading probably something him and his lawyers put together.
Hmm.
He wasn't allowed to field questions. There wasn't allowed to be
Hmm.
cameras in this press room, which is very interesting. I think that's a little weird, but Ohtani basically, to sum a lot of it up, said, I've never bet on sports and I've never bet on baseball. He was unaware of these, some of the stuff that Ippei was doing. Like he was in $4.5 million of debt. Ippei said that Shohei, out of the kindness of a heart, because the Japanese culture is very loyal to each other, Ippei, Shohei paid off these debts.
Wow.
But the thing is Ohtani didn't know that this happened. So Ippei just took the money. So now all of Ohtani's lawyers are saying that it's a massive theft. And
Yeah.
a lot of questions arise coming out of this. I don't know how much of this you looked into, but a lot of questions arise. How do you just not know? Like, I understand you just got a $700 million contract. Obviously, he doesn't have all that. How do you just not see that you're randomly missing $4.5 million?
Yeah, exactly. That's a big question for sure. Also understand that there are guys, especially he's playing in a foreign country, like he's not from the US. Maybe he has a financial manager. Maybe this translator has some sort of like reach into that money. Apparently he does,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And yeah, that is interesting. Um you obviously the questions wonder, well, like maybe Otani was betting, like blah blah, like maybe that's why he didn't say anything about the money. But I don't know. I'd kind of doubt it.
I don't, I don't think so. And the way I look at this is like, I usually in this case, I think like, oh, like, oh, it's always going to be the player. But in this case, I don't think so. I think Shohei is innocent here. I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he's doing all the right steps to finally get to what he needs to do. He's allowing the right people to take care of it. Another thing too is MLB is being kind of weird about the situation. In years past with like the Astros scandal and Pete Rose and you name it, any other scandal like PDs, they jump right down to people's throats and they're constantly doing stuff. I don't agree with how they handled the Astros situation, but they're kind of standing on the side and they're just kind of watching to see what happens, because the last thing Major League Baseball needs to do is have to ban Ohtani, because Ohtani he has brought relevance back to MLB and he has made so much money for the MLB. So this is the last thing MLB needs right now.
I do agree. I think the amount of money he's bringing in from outside the US and just in the US alone it's unbelievable, because he is that much of an asset to the league, which is why he got paid so much. You mentioned a little bit about the press conference about how they didn't have any cameras or anything like that in there. And you said it was weird, and I do think it was a little bit weird, but I also think that it wasn't what they're doing there is trying to control the narrative to me.
Yeah, and that's a good thing too, because there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of
There are.
questions to be asked. And well, if you don't allow people to ask questions, there can't be any speculation, because you read all these articles and everybody's writing about the same thing. Everybody's saying the same thing. You could propose questions all you want, but Shohei, and I guess that's kind of the nice thing about him not being able to speak very good English is that there's not going to be a whole lot of, like speculation coming from all of that.
Mhm.
But
It'll be very
I,
direct.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's going to be curious to see how all this unravels. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot come from this over the next week, just because the season's starting, and if this has kind of been taken into more of a government thing. I know that Bookie that was saying Ipe owed $4.5 million. I know his house was raided, I think by the government agencies or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weird, fishy stuff going on. But staying on the major league side, unless you got anything else to add to that.
I'm ready to move to opening day, man.
Yeah, let's talk about opening day. This is honestly my Christmas. This is my whatever you want to call it. This is my favorite day of the year, even though it's looking like the Brewers are going to get rained out. Yeah, we could just start right from the AL East, looking at the projection standings. It's going to be another good year, second year, with, pitch clock and all
Mhm.
this stuff. I think they shortened the pitch clock a little bit. I don't know if there's any other drastic big rule changes, but AL East, they're talking. It's going to look like Yankees are going to kind of come back to form a little bit. This not conference, but division is going to look a little more even. They don't have Fangraphs doesn't have them winning more than anybody more than 90 games, which I disagree with.
Well, it has the Astros at 90, Dodgers at 92, and Braves at 97.
AL East,
within the East, it's just the Yanks at 88.
yeah. Yeah, I know. And I think that division is going to just be, it's going to be a very tight knit one. I don't know if I agree with the Rays being second, but I think they're giving a little too much credit to the Yankees, especially with their history of injuries and Garrett Cole going to be out for a couple of months. So they're down a big arm, and one of the biggest arms on the market just got taken off yesterday with Jordan Montgomery going to the Diamondbacks. I like Orioles taking the AL East. That is my projection.
Wasn't that a $25 million deal for Montgomery? Did I see that 1 year, 25 mil? Did I read that right? Or
I
was it
don't.
1 year, 15?
I'm not sure
Okay.
what that was. But
But either way.
I do know for the Yankees though, they do have Juan Soto this year. So their outfield is looking very, very good. So that's kind of like their consolation price for not getting Ohtani, I guess. So
Yeah. I mean, well, you look at the conference and projections have like 4 of the top 5, 4 of the 5 teams, and not the conference, the division in the East are within like 3 games of each other in the projected final standings, which is insane. But it is that competitive of a division. And you're right, maybe you're not expecting the Rays to be like second. That's where it's at. But I mean, the Orioles and Blue Jays are both tied in third, like 1 game behind them. So it's like it's a total toss up. And the Red Sox are still a wild card too. Who knows what the Sox could do? You never know.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of these divisions are, looking all up and down the board. This one isn't, the AL East isn't because all these teams sucks. It's because they're all really good, and I feel like we're going to see a lot of series split. Like every team's going to win at least one. I don't think we're going to see very many sweeps, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah,
but
let's move to the Central then, because this brings up something for me as a Tigers fan. They've got the Tigers projected 79 and 83. That's like basically their record last year, and there seems like clear progress in that team to me across the board, like clear growth. And then they have some guys down in the minors that they didn't bring up that I'm like thinking like, well, what if they can make a push for the roster later in the season? But they've got the Twins projected to win the division, 84 and 78, 84 wins, 78 losses. Then nobody else has a projected winning record in that division, which again, last year I felt like the Central was a complete toss up. I think it is this year as well. So maybe the Twins are the slight lead and the Tigers are technically in third, but man, I really think anyone could win that division. I don't think the Sox,
agree.
but like I think anybody really
agree.
could. Even the Sox could. So if you're a Tigers fan, I think this is a year to lock in and watch, and because there's a good chance that you're competing right up until the end, just because you don't even have to have a great year. The other teams aren't that good.
I agree. And we talk about how good divisions are, and I think Central is one of those little bit weaker divisions, but I think teams like the Tigers and Royals are finally starting to grow a little bit more. We're
Mhm.
finally starting to see it. I think the Sox are going to be way worse than what they have them projected. Um, I think, but I think this top four I think is about accurate. I think it's going to take whoever's hot towards the end of the season.
Mhm.
You know, the Tigers, I think they look way better than they have in the last few years, as long as their rookies produce. I think
And
that is a huge key for the
that is
Tigers.
a huge key, but Skubal right now is 4th in AL Cy Young. Like, that's where he's sitting. And then the Tigers brought in Jack Flaherty, who you're familiar with the Brewers a little bit, and so he's gonna come over and be one of the starting pitchers for the Tigers. I don't know, what do you think about him?
30. I think it's a high. I think the Tigers got a bargain for him, and I think it's
Okay.
got a lot of high upside. I think if the season at the trade by the trade deadline isn't going the way they had hoped, I think, and if Flaherty's having a really good season, I could see the Tigers trading him and potentially getting maybe some more pieces for him. Maybe if some of their prospective like pitching arms in the minors are doing really well, they can move on and
Mhm.
get a bigger bat that they
Well,
need.
that's what I'm wondering is if he's pitching well enough to flip to a team that needs pitching help, and the Tigers are like, "We could take some hitting," which they definitely could. That Matt Manning isn't like in the projected rotation. I'm sure he's gonna get some starts for sure, but like Matt Manning is a guy who could have a good season in the minors or just like even in the majors and just say, "Hey, we don't need," because I think Reese Olson, Kenta Maeda, Flaherty, Skubal are like the 4, and then Mize is the 5th one,
Hmm.
and then Manning is like that oddball 6, I think.
Hmm.
And so there's a chance there where you're right. Flaherty, trade him midseason, go get another bat. A guy like Manning might emerge and take his starting spot or a spot in the rotation. Maybe Jackson Jobe has a good enough season. I think he's starting in Double A at Erie. I could be wrong. He might be starting with the Mud Hens. Maybe he emerges. I mean, he had a really good spring training, and they're like, okay, we feel comfortable bringing you up. We've talked about this before on the show. Is that we don't want to rush anybody. We think the Tigers have had a big problem
Yeah.
with rushing prospects.
Hmm.
So, but then right, if the Tigers can somehow get rid of Baez, which I don't think they can,
They
Ryan
need
Kreidler,
to. I
they
think
do.
they need to.
They do, but I don't know how. I don't know how.
You
Like
can't.
he,
You're
his contract's too big, and that's why Ryan Kreidler, who probably is better as a shortstop right now, hitting not more consistent in the field, probably not as dynamic of a
Mhm,
fielder as
mhm.
Baez, definitely not. But a better hitter and more consistent, doesn't make the stupid errors, is gonna have to play in AAA. He literally said that he's like, I don't know why I'm not on the roster. And I'm like,
Right,
I should be on the roster, and he's
right,
probably right, to be fair.
right. Yeah, the Tigers need to find some way to get out of Baez. I know that contract is big. Called it when they signed him that was a bad signing because I am part of that has a little because he played for the Cubs, but I didn't think he was that good with the Cubs anyway.
No.
He was good with the glove, I guess,
And then
but
when he got traded to the Mets, he had a good, like, half a season,
yeah,
and he parlayed it into the Tigers
yeah.
signing him to a big deal because they wouldn't pay Correa, and they wouldn't pay either of the guys that the Rangers got, and yeah.
So here's what Tigers, if Baez can somehow turn it around, hit 260,
Yeah.
270, maybe, I think the Tigers are a serious playoff or division
Mhm.
contender. And especially if Flaherty and all them, because, especially if you can somehow get into the playoffs, Flaherty's a good leader for the pitching staff because he played for the Cardinals and the Cardinals were consistently in the playoffs. Baez won a World
Mhm.
Series with the Cubs, so that's really good. And you have AJ Hinch, a World Series winning manager.
And then Kenta Maeda, who's been around,
Yeah,
who's,
and
like,
he's
40.
he's been on the Dodgers, he's been on the Twins, so you have some playoff experience and some good veteran leadership. Some of them are a little bit older, so I think it's going to be interesting. But I think the Tigers, I think you have something to be excited for. I think it's going to be close all season. So I wouldn't expect any 90-win season. If they do, that'd be fascinating. But I think it would be fun. I hate that there's blackout restrictions. So like, not that I'm a Tigers fan, but I still like to watch them and see how they're doing. So,
Mhm.
but let's move on out west. Obviously,
Yep.
Astros continue to dominate in the West, according to FanGraphs. Mariners, the defending Mariners in second place, defending World Series champs. Rangers in third, which I think is about. I don't think they'll be third. Angels and then Athletics rounded out.
Angels and I might swap those, the Angels and the Athletics. The A's might have a better year than the Angels,
I might agree with you on that one.
especially without Ohtani now, and
And
I don't
Trout
know.
can never stay healthy.
Yeah.
Rangers, I think that's about accurate. They're not as strong in some areas as they were during that World Series run. I also think they just got hot at the right time during the playoffs.
Mhm.
Mariners, I don't know. It sucks for I love the Mariners just because it's like the Seattle's just never really made the playoffs. They made the playoffs once in the last 20 years. So I would like to see them get there, but they're gonna have to look for a wild card spot.
Yeah. That division, it seems like it's the Astros. Moving to the NL East, Braves, it's far and away to me the team for that division, one of the best teams in the league. Atlanta's projected 97 win team, could get to 100. That's the where we're at with the projections there. And then it's the Phillies after that, and then Madison, Marlins, and Nationals. Everyone falls into place. It feels like it's the Braves division, and maybe the Phillies could have a good year,
Well, the
but
Phillies have been really good the last couple of years. They've been like a team that is going to contest the Braves. The Mets, they could be sneaky good. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near that. Marlins have been pretty consistently good. But Phillies, I don't know, man. Like, I think they look good they got Whit Merrifield over this offseason. And I think that fills some holes, especially as a utility guy. You got most of the same players. You did lose Rhys Hoskins, though. Not that he played last year, but he was a big part in that World Series run a couple years ago. So Phillies, Braves, I don't know. I think it's going to be a toss-up, but ultimately I think Braves will probably end up taking that division.
you want to hear something that's crazy? The projected run differential for the Nationals, okay, is like almost the complete opposite of the Braves. The Braves projected run differential is 164 plus 164. Nationals minus 154. That's brutal. That is so brutal. Let's move to the Central though, because then when we get to the West, there's someone worse. But yeah,
So
the Central's a toss-up too, right?
no,
NL
I don't.
Central?
I personally don't think so. I think it's going to be closer than it was the year before. Fangraphs has this being way closer than I think it's going to be in terms of records. They had the Cardinals winning, and then Cubs, Brewers, Reds, Pirates. I don't think that's what's going to be the case.
Okay.
I think it'll be Brewers, Cardinals fighting for the top. I don't think the Cubs are going to be that good. I think the Cubs will probably be more like they were last year, where it took them down to the last, a little bit. Reds and Pirates are getting better. So this division is going to be constantly swapping first places throughout the year, and it's just whoever's going to be built for longevity. And to me, that's the Brewers. I think they have the most experience. They have the most experience, but also they are really young. I think they're one of the younger teams in the division this year. Corbin Burns no longer with them. Brandon Woodruff out for the season. That's two big arms.
You guys, yeah. I mean,
but we also have a lot of our prospects coming up and starting on Thursday. So they have them projecting. They have the Brewers as being a losing team. I don't think that's going to be the case. But again, everybody is within 2 wins of being 500. So I think this is going to be another one of those. I don't know if it's necessarily because they're bad, but because they're young and everybody's going to be beating up on each other. Moving out west, I guess you have any comments? I guess I didn't say that.
Not really. I mean, I think I kind of mentioned what I thought, but I don't have that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So moving out west, this one's kind of easy to decide. You're gonna have the Dodgers, Diamondbacks are looking good. This one's gonna be Dodgers, Diamondbacks, Giants, and Padres. Rockies are just kind of left in the dust.
There's that run differential I was talking about, minus 194 for the Rockies. That's the worst in the league. I think that's the worst projected.
Yeah.
Yep, that is the worst.
Yeah. So I think Dodgers are the juggernaut right now. As long as they stay healthy, I think they're going to be the clear front winners. I think Diamondbacks is the good number 2 thing. I think they're going to have more wins than what they're projected as. And Giants, I think it's going to be Giants, Diamondbacks for 2, and then Padres. I think there's a good chance we see 3 teams come out of this division for the playoffs. So
wow, yeah, well, it's possible. That, MLB is it's hard to project when a lot of the team. You talk about the Brewers, right? You're bringing up young prospects, so that's all purely assuming that these guys are going to emerge in the way that we think they are, or that they've shown capability to either last season in limited action or in the minors. So, but some of these teams that we're talking about at the top have sustained success with some guys who've been around. I mean, you're talking like the top four: Braves, Dodgers, Astros, Yankees. Nothing uncertain about what they're going to do. Even the Rays and Mariners. One that we didn't really mention but touched on briefly was the Orioles having one of the better records in the league at 85 and 77 as they're projected. That's interesting to me, that the turnaround they've made over the last few handful of years or so. But yeah, I think I'm ready to quick jump into NFL rules and then wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, we can. Yeah, so I mean, there's a list of things that are coming this way in NFL, and football's gonna look a little bit different this season. I mean, I think the biggest one, in my opinion, is going to be the kickoff rules that have changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to finally bring some more excitement into. I think it's going to finally bring some excitement into the kickoff, because the kickoffs at this point are pointless, and so yeah, more excitement.
I agree.
Do you want to explain to like what that's going to look like?
Yeah, so basically, if you've watched the XFL, then you'll know that the teams line up kind of, you have like your kicker, and then everyone else is like in a line, like a straight line on the field, like downfield a little bit further, like 15 yards or something like that. And then they line up, and then the other team lines up like 5 yards apart from them or 10 yards apart from them, whatever, straight across of them with like 9 or 10 players, and then a returner. And then it basically limits high speed collisions, because they're not running like full speed from like one direction, and then the other guys from another direction at them. And so it's a player safety rule, and it will completely change how kicking works. I don't think I'm gonna like it as much. I think it makes it interesting. A lot of people think there's going to be a higher chance for kickoff return touchdowns because of it, which is interesting. A team like the Steelers just signed Cordero Patterson, who's like one of the greatest of all time. He was a free agent. I didn't even realize that. And right when this new rule got announced, I saw that he got signed. So that's a guy who you're going to want on your team for a rule change like this, if you think you have a chance of scoring more on kickoffs. But it does feel, it's been expected that the NFL would take some of these rules from the XFL, and this is like the biggest one. It's a huge change. It changes how the game has looked over the course of the last like 80 years or something like that. You know what I mean? Like since the inception of the kickoff, like it has been the way it's been for a long time. They've changed little things about it, but the formation is different now, like completely different. It doesn't even resemble what it was before. So it's interesting.
Yeah. How many times throughout the season are we going to see back-to-back kickoff returns? So one team does it and then the other team does it. Because I think there's a really good possibility that we see that.
I agree. And so with that said, I mean, there are a couple other rules. A big one that people are talking about was the hip drop tackle, which I think is stupid, banning that rule. There are a lot of players coming out, against it, because what happens is players are, sometimes it's usually tight ends getting tackled like this, sometimes running backs getting knee injuries, or receivers, but because when they're getting tackled, it's the hip drop is like you wrap up around the waist and then you like drop your hips and like leave your feet and like fall with all your weight directly on their legs.
Pick them up and you throw them down.
Yeah.
that's I don't know. To me, that's a hip drop tackle. If you're just tackling them normal, then like
it's just the thing is, how are we supposed to tackle people anymore in the NFL? Like,
right.
What do you want people to do? The hip drop tackle, you talk about hitting people high, don't want to hit them in the knees. Like, where are we supposed to hit guys? How are we supposed to tackle these giant guys? And especially in a league that's been promoting speed and offense, and then the defenses adapt, and then they throw out like a tight end, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta. These are guys that you have to. I mean, you see T.J. Hawkinson, some great tight ends, big dudes, strong dudes, very good at breaking tackles. And they kind of have to be taken down like this sometimes. And that's just the reality of it. And so I think like just because of a couple injuries, now we're banning this. I don't know. It feels like you're really making it hard on defenses. It feels like you're really making it hard on defenses to actually make a play. And now it's like, how do we tackle? And I think a lot of defensive players are coming out in defense of or an argument against this rule change.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know. We saw a lot of players tweeting out, just make this flag football already.
Yeah, but another rule that before, so we can get to it as well, that I thought was interesting was the Detroit Lions applied for a rule change. This was there specifically, which was like, if you win one challenge, you get that challenge back. So before, you get 2 challenges, and 2 no matter what, unless you win both challenges, then you can get a third. Now it's, if you win one of your 2 challenges, you get that third challenge. And I think that's a good rule. I mean, the challenges are, you kind of have to have them. There's human error in how officials call these games and how just things happen. And if you win a challenge, you get it right, you should just get it back. Like, that's just, I don't know, that makes sense to me. And so that was a pretty unanimous.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to like if you lose the challenge, you lose a timeout, but if you like win it, you get to keep your timeout, but you still lose the challenge.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, other than rules, that's pretty much the notably like big ones. I mean, there's a couple other ones, but I don't know. We don't really have a whole lot of time to dig into that, and to me, they're not as interesting as the others. So,
yeah, I think that's a good time to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for listening, guys. This has been Sports Plus Opinion. That's the SPO podcast. This is episode 8. So we'll be back, or episode 9. Ah, dang.
It's all good.
But this is our 9th episode. We're gonna come out with these usually every Monday and Wednesday. Usually, sometimes we're recording. Yeah, like I think we're gonna get to a system where we record Sunday nights and post them Mondays, or just do them Sunday nights, or record Tuesday night, do Wednesdays. I don't know, but it's basically Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday night, Wednesday. Like, that's our schedule. We're hoping to try to keep it Sundays. I think that kind of works for me and Jackson's schedule. But things are a work in progress. We're going to try and get the Instagram live all set up here at some point, and just sort of connect all of our socials and do some of that stuff. You'll see more of these clip videos out there as well, and like Reels and TikTok and stuff like that. So we're excited to get things rolling on all our social media.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We will be back next week, or I guess this weekend, after the conclusion or during some of maybe those Elite 8 games. We'll see when the Elite 8 games are going on, but it's probably going to be Sunday night. So thanks for listening to SPO, and we'll see you guys real soon.